Welcome to Winning-stl, where we have conversations about how St. Louis can best compete and win in the battle for talent, jobs, growth, and equity. Winning-stl is presented by Purina, who creates richer lives for pets and the people who love them, and has proudly called St. Louis home since 1894. Joining me today is Jim McKelvey, founder and co-founder of numerous companies, including Block, formerly known as Square, Launch Code, Invisibly, Third Degree Glass Factory, and that's just a few on his innovative journey over the years. So Jim, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for hosting in a building near and dear to my heart. I spent 18 years here, the Post Building, thank you.
Yeah, one of the great architectural wonders of downtown St. Louis.
It is, it's really beautiful. I wished it looked like this when I worked here. It looks great.
Yeah, it's a great space, and it was a factory.
Right.
I mean, so it's built, when we rehabbed this building, we had to cut through a piece of concrete that was that thick.
Wow.
Like, we had to have a special saw flown in from Belgium. Like, there was no saw in the United States that could cut through the floor of this building.
Wow.
So the Belgians provided this insane monster saw. This is a monster building.
Yeah. So Jim, when we were doing the lead-in, I was listing all the companies that you've been involved with, are involved with. It's a significant list. You've been wildly successful. You've made a lot of money. You are really well regarded amongst all the business leaders I ever talked to. So why keep driving? What is it that makes you want to continue to push so hard? Because it seems like that's the case.
Probably guilt. I don't know. I mean, so it was weird. When the tsunami of money hit, I was, sort of like, whoa, wake up and you're rich. And I thought, I can do nothing.
Right.
I can do anything. But then I had this overwhelming sense that I should be taking this massive windfall. I got super lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And doing something with it, because I've always worried that, I've always criticized people who have the chance to make a change and don't do it. And so then fate puts me in this situation where I now have all these resources, and I can get anybody on the phone. I got an invitation to go meet one of the leaders of Europe last week, and
okay.
I mean, it was just like crazy stuff. We just met a senator, or not a senator, a congressman, like 2 minutes before I came up here.
Okay.
I was talking to the congressman. He's down on that floor. To have this amount of potential impact and not try anything would just be irresponsible.
Sure.
So I'm working harder now than I did when I was poor, because I just feel like, I get the chance to do something. And the other thing is, we're both from St. Louis. St. Louis is a very conservative town.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think we're that way is because this place was super successful 120 years ago. Like the turn of the last century, St. Louis was kicking ass. It was one of the top cities on the planet. And that made so many fortunes that were so large that they were passed along from generation to generation, fifth and sixth generations of wealth. But every time money gets passed down another generation, it becomes a little more conservative.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
It's not really your money. It was grandpa's money. And then it was daddy's kind of money. And it's your, and your job is to just don't screw up.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened, and I sort of lived this without realizing it, my town became conservative. It became a town of, well, let me check. We have to be sure. That's never been done before. Like, there's this conservatism to St. Louis that I hate.
So a lack of risk-taking, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that...
Because you can't take risks with grandpa's money. I mean, look at talk about Elon for a second. Like, okay, you could say he's nuts, but the guy bet his own money on SpaceX. He took his money from PayPal,
sure.
and he says, "I'm going to land a rocket like this," and the first rocket blows up, and the second rocket blows.
Right.
But he's betting on something that's never been done.
Fair.
And whatever you think about the politics, the guy had the balls to do it, and the reason he did that was because it was his money.
Yeah.
And so I got this pile of resources, and I'm like, I should do stuff that nobody else can do.
Fascinating.
Because I don't need to make another dime.
But you're still obviously driven, like you said, working harder than you did when you were poor.
And I also believe in profit business, for-profit businesses to keep things, the profit signal is good. Like if you're just spending money for something that nobody wants,
Right.
well, then you're an idiot. So you have to have the market discipline. So I think it's important to not only build something, to build something with good economics.
So Jim, I talked to you briefly off camera. I read your book, The Innovation Stack. Really interesting. In fact, more interesting than I was even expecting.
You didn't expect it to be well written. You did not expect it to be well written.
Maybe I didn't, but I did enjoy it. And I thought there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about that, because I think there's a lot of things that would be interesting to people in St. Louis, to business leaders.
Sure.
Starting with the word entrepreneur. I think we all think we know what it means. I thought I knew what it meant. You suggested there is an original meaning of that term that maybe is a little, that's been watered down or is not the same as we understand it today.
Yes.
Help us understand that.
So entrepreneur, which is this horrible long word that nobody can spell, used to have a different meaning. Today it means somebody who starts a business. But 150 years ago, the meaning of that word was somebody who was doing something strange in business. It was an oddity if you were an entrepreneur. It was Henry Ford, who was trying to build mass market automobiles. He was an entrepreneur. Now, somebody who was building buggy whips and carriages was a business person.
Right.
So the word entrepreneur morphed over the years, and it lost its edge.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur used to be somewhat of an insult. Like,
That's interesting.
like,
okay.
This guy's an entrepreneur. Is like, don't let your daughter date him. He's crazy. He's going to do something nuts. And that definition was lost, but I wanted to resurrect it because, and this is what the innovation stack goes into. If you look at, what invention looks like, the most important inventions are ones where there is no precedent, where the Wright brothers are trying to fly for the first time. So they can't copy anything. They don't have a model that they already know works. Now, most of the time, if you want to make money, find a process that works and copy that process. Okay, so that's how we have almost everything in the world. But if you want to create something new, then by definition, there's nothing to copy. And if you start down that path, you end up in this world of the original entrepreneur, which is there's nothing to copy and you have to figure it out. And it's a totally different set of rules. And that's what the book's about.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're there trying to solve a problem that someone else didn't say, or an opportunity that someone else didn't recognize. In Square Block's case, all these small merchants that were maybe below the threshold of working in the, connecting with the credit card companies. Is that right?
Yeah. So when we started Square, which we now call Block, but Square at the time was just built for me. I was a glassblower on Del Mar Boulevard. I had some stuff to sell and I couldn't sell it because I couldn't take an American Express card. And I was upset and I called Jack, who, Jack used to work with me at another company.
Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey, yeah, so Jack. And Jack and I had already decided to start a new company together. And the sale that I lost was my inspiration for turning my iPhone into a credit card machine. So I called Jack and that's what we did. But the interesting thing about that was that we had no idea if it would be successful because nobody was doing it and there was no way to tell that there were millions of small merchants like myself out there. We thought, I knew I was there and I thought, well, maybe there are other people, but we didn't know there would be millions. It turns out there were.
Yeah. In the book, there's, to me, the most fascinating part was you've had this success. You went through all the hard work, you got the VC, and oh my God, it's working, and you had a great design. All these things are happening. And then you say, all of a sudden you realize, like the worst possible business news, the ultimate predator, I think you described,
yes.
Amazon is gunning for your business. So maybe a moment or two on that. And then what could others in St. Louis, or others in business, what could we take from that? What are the takeaways there?
So what happened with Square was Amazon, after we were about a 3-year-old company, decides that they were just going to take our whole company. They were just going to steal our whole business. And what Amazon does when they do that, they add the Amazon brand name, they cut the price by 30%, so they undercut your price, and then they roll it out to millions and millions of Amazon customers overnight. So they have this massive advantage.
Right.
And we looked, when this happened, we looked for any examples of companies who had beaten Amazon, and there were none. Like if Amazon does this, you die. That is 100% true, right, up until Amazon did it to Square. And so we went back and tried to formulate a response. But there's nothing we could do. Like we don't have their balance sheet. We don't have millions of users. We don't have we don't have a listening device in your home. Alexa.
How do I beat Amazon?
Yeah, they have all this stuff that we don't have, so we couldn't really fight them. So we just kept doing what we were doing, which was serving our customers. And amazingly, after a year, they quit. They just got out.
Didn't they send their customers your Square?
Yes, they mailed one of our Square readers to their soon-to-be former customers.
Wow.
They said, we're out, go to Square,
nice touch.
and we're done. So it was cool the way they bowed out. But that led me to this question, it's like, what the hell just happened? Like, did we just get super, super lucky, or was there some other force?
Right.
And that's actually how the innovation stack came to be, because I spent 2 years looking for examples of this having happened anywhere. And I looked, around and then through history, and then I found these occasional examples of similar things where you'd see this tiny little thing, this little baby that was attacked by a monster, and the baby wins. And when I had 6 or 7 of those examples, I saw this pattern. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what happened to Square, and it happened to Southwest Airlines, and it happened to IKEA, and it happened, and I started seeing this pattern, and it was at that point that I was like, great, I'm done, I've satisfied myself.
Yeah.
But then I thought, wait a second, because all my examples were history, and there was only one guy who was still alive who'd lived through it. It was Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest Airlines. So I called Herb up, and I just said, hey man, look, sorry to bother you, sir, but I'd love to talk to you about what happened to Square and what happened to Southwest. So he was super generous. He invited me down to visit him in Dallas, and we spent a day talking, and he said, yeah, I didn't realize that what we lived through at Southwest fit this pattern. And he said, now how are you going to share this with the world? So imagine this, okay, so I'm sitting on Herb Kelleher's couch, all right? This guy is a mega presence. He's just a force of nature. And he chain smokes cool menthols, all right? So I'm sitting on the couch, and he's pacing around his office, smoking, right? And he's laying down this stratocumulus layer of nicotine. And he's speaking to me down from the cloud. And it's like having God talk to you, because I'm saying, this deep baritone is saying, and how will you share this with the world? And I was like, I guess I'll write a book. So that's how the innovation stack came to be.
That's great.
It was Herb Kelleher and this idea that, look, we spend our whole lives copying damn near everything we do. And copying usually works. Everything around us is a copy. That camera, right? There's nothing original about that camera. Sorry, no, I'm not supposed to look at it, but look at that. Whoever invented that didn't invent the camera. That is a great-grandchild camera.
Right.
Same with this. This table. I mean, it's
not the first one ever done.
No, and it's it's not even stable. But even the wood in this table is not original, because these trees evolved from other trees. So almost everything in nature, almost everything is copies of copies of copies. And so we're so used to copying. You are wired to copy. Your DNA itself is a copy machine, and everything that you copy makes you feel comfortable. But we don't get progress simply by copying. And what I've seen, unfortunately, is so many talented people, when they find a problem that requires a new solution, sit there and say, well, I'm not qualified to do that. I don't have the qualifications to do this new thing. And my 300-page answer to them is, you're right. You're not qualified. But every time humanity makes progress, it's at the hands of somebody who's not qualified.
Yeah.
So the Wright brothers were not qualified pilots.
No.
They couldn't be, because they didn't have airplanes.
It didn't exist.
So don't disqualify yourself. I don't want all our talent sitting on the sidelines saying, oh, here's a problem and I can't do anything about it because I'm not qualified. And that's what the innovation stack is about. It's about getting people to recognize this different world where you have to invent. And it is a different world.
And maybe those of us that aren't true entrepreneurs, but even in our own business, can take something from that and say, hey, within the space I work in, there's some chance to take a risk or to do something differently, or
yes, but let me nitpick your
Yes,
first sentence.
please.
Even those of us who aren't entrepreneurs. Bullshit, man. I'm not an entrepreneur. I am super scared of everything, okay? I'm just a guy who, when I get into a situation when nobody has solved a problem and I can't find a solution, I try stuff. And sometimes it works. But that's not natural, and it's not comfortable, and it's not who I am. Like, most of the stuff that I do is just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I think this idea that we are either born as an entrepreneur or not is wrong. I think everybody's got this in them. We as humans try to not put ourselves in situations where we have to do anything original, okay?
Right. Because you could fail, and that's scary.
You could fail, and it's terrifying, and your body is wired to keep you in sync with the crowd. Like, have you ever been somewhere and you're dressed differently? How weird you feel?
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah. That times 100 if your business or your profession is something that nobody else does. So I just don't want people to always stop because they're not part of the crowd. Like, so the fact that you're not an entrepreneur, well, you're not an entrepreneur right now because you've done interviews and this is a known format. But there may be a situation in your life a year from now, 5 years from now, where you're in a situation where there's no YouTube video. Like, you got a problem. Nobody knows how to solve it. Maybe you're the first guy on the planet who figured this out. Does that mean you can't do it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know you that well, but my guess is you probably could as long as you tried. Not a guarantee that you're going to do it.
Right.
But I'll guarantee you won't if you don't try.
I want to thank you. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank
you so much.
You know, journalism is so important for the world. So thank you for what you do and all the people at the Post and STL today.